get through my disclaimer here right quick. All right, when this period of retirement, where Jesus is going away with his apostles, more time to spend with them, getting away from the Jewish crowds that are coming around him. Only turns out he's getting into crowds more and more, it seems like, where he goes. Second retirement, first he goes and feeds the 5,000, but then the second time he goes up to the region of Tyre and Sidon. We've talked about that, where he heals the lady's daughter that has the demon because she keeps insisting. Third time, goes back down to the east side of the Sea of Galilee and feeds the 4,000, and that one. So we'll go 4,000, get through that. Just kind of do a little quick review here like that. Then goes back across then to Magdala over there, where Pharisees and Sadducees, which are normally opposed politically and whatever, team together then, trying and testing him, and wants a sign from heaven. He says, you can read the skies, but you can't read the signs of the times, talking about him, who he is. So he calls them hypocrites. I want to stop just a minute and kind of catch up from my message last week and talk about hypocrites for just a minute. And let's think about that term that Jesus used here to call the Pharisees and Sadducees and the group there that was doing this. Oh, what is a Pharisee? What is a Pharisee? What is it? I'm having a bad day today. What is a hypocrite? Hypocrite is one who claims or pretends to believe certain things religiously and practice those things, but he really practices something else. In modern day time, we might say he doesn't practice what he preaches. So he says one thing, but his life, he does something else. What he does not agree with his supposed beliefs there. And go back to those of your last quarter, Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 6. What was the big thing? You sound the trumpet before you give your alms. Why? So you can be seen, right? So what do you really want out of this? You want the praise of God for giving it, or you want the praise of men? Or you want the praise of men? Hypocritical type thing. Same thing with the prayer when you make it out in the street corner, and same thing then when you are fasting and you put this, look at me, poor thing type thing, I'm fasting. So people want to see you. So that's the reward Jesus says they have. So really, hypocrisy is not an outward thing of people seeing me do these things. Hypocrisy comes from a problem in the heart. And we're out there, the phrase here says, we're on the stage to win applause. It's like what it's like there because of our heart. But think about this a minute. Say we don't practice what you preach. Really, maybe it's more than that. Think about hypocrisy a minute. Do we really believe what we preach? Is the question. It's not a matter of hypocrisy is a failure to practice what you preach, but do I really believe it? Because if I believed what I'm preaching, would I not be inclined to do it? So it goes down one layer lower than just not practicing what I'm preaching. I don't really believe I believe what I'm doing when I'm a hypocrite. So Jesus said the big thing here is believe what you preach. If you're not living up to it, do what? Repent and do what you're saying, if you really believe it. So do it. So just a couple of thoughts there about hypocrisy, and we think about it being an outward shell of what we say we are, but really, is it even deeper than that? Is the fact we don't believe what we're saying, therefore we don't practice it. Is the point I'm trying to get to. Jesus puts it in these passages here. I've heard in news conferences that Nick Saban has done, where he says we strive to be perfect. That's a football team. We strive to be perfect. I know we want to accomplish perfection, but what does he want? I want the closest thing I can get to perfection by striving for perfection. We won't get there, That's kind of like when I heard him say that 2 or 3 times, I thought about us and living the Christian life. What am I striving for? Just to be better tomorrow than I was today? Well, yeah, I am, but that's not really what I'm striving for. What am I really pushing for? What I really want? I want perfection. I want to be perfect. Be perfect as your Heavenly Father is perfect. So I'm striving for perfection. Will I get there? No. But if I don't strive for perfection, where am I going to wind up? If I set my bar somewhere else just to be a little better today than I was to yesterday, I'm just a little better. What if I'm striving for perfection? So I hope that makes sense there, that get my heart right and strive to be perfect every day. Not that I'll get there, but I'm going to strive for it and work toward perfection. Okay, thoughts on that? Anybody kind of catch up from what I had left from last time? So, okay, on the fourth retirement, we had the 3 of them so far. Fourth time. This time they're crossing the Sea of Galilee, and the disciples only have one loaf of bread with them. So Jesus talks to them, and he tells them to beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees, those who he had just talked to, and also the leaven of Herod. Well, they got to thinking, wait a minute, he's talking about leaven. Where does leaven go in? Leaven goes in bread. We didn't bring enough bread. We don't have enough bread to eat. And so they get all concerned about this. They're crossing over the sea with not enough bread. And Jesus perceives what they're thinking, and he says, wait a minute. Now, just stop for a minute and put yourself in this situation here. You're going across the sea with Jesus, and you got 1 loaf of bread. We're going to all starve, right? What did he remind them of? Did you not see the 5,000 and what I did? Did you not just see and he didn't just mention one, did you not just see the 4,000 and see what I did? Why do you think I'm worried about the fact you got 1 loaf of bread? That's not the point. Not the point. And then when he states this point to them again, what word does he use this time? The exact same word he used the first time. Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. He didn't change his message. It's the same message. They were just misunderstanding his message. They weren't comprehending what he was saying. So he gave them the same message again after he clarified what they were thinking there. So leaven in this case is this pervasive influence, generally of a corrupting nature. So be aware of this corrupting influence the Pharisees and Sadducees, or the Herodians, can have on your life. Beware of that. Because he just left this conversation with them over here when they wanted a sign, and he called them hypocrites. Well, don't let that rub off on you, apostles. Don't let that affect you. That's this leaven, this influence of them over there. So when they were concerned about enough to eat, he fed the 5,000, the 4,000, took up that, and he said they had little faith. They were putting their emphasis on the wrong thing. They were thinking physical, and what's he still trying to get them to do? See the spiritual side, okay? And so the question that pops here for us, how about us sometime? Do we take what Jesus is saying and misapply it? Do we not think where he wants us to go be thinking? In this case, the emphasis on the wrong thing. Matthew 16:12 says that they finally realized he's not talking about that, but he's talking about the doctrine or the teachings, the religious beliefs and practices of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Made me think then of this passage in Acts 17:11 with the Bereans. Moreover, those Thessalonica, they searched the scripture daily where these things were so. We all know this verse. Well, again, how about us? So are you taking what I am saying in here and looking at it from the scriptures? I hope you're reading the text. What I talked about. I hope you're studying your lesson and you think about it ahead of time. But are you taking what I'm saying and filtering it through Acts 17:11 as they did and making sure that what we're saying is so? I think it was last quarter I was talking about when I pray about this class and my part of it. I told them I think last quarter, two factors. Number one, what I say is accurate spiritually, scripturally. That's number one. Then number two is that I'm doing it in an effective way to help us all with our study. Okay, I'm applying the things right and saying the things that will help us all. So with this class or with this sermon Steve's going to preach or wherever it is, let's don't be caught like these apostles were and getting off on the wrong points and misapplying things and not understanding what Jesus is saying to us. Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. He didn't say it different the next time. He said the same thing. It's up to us to understand what he's saying. Okay? Again, you got thoughts? Jump in. Okay. Tracy?
Just a quick point.
Sure.
This passage, when he says it in Mark, verse 18, having eyes you do not see, and ears you do not hear, which goes back to Isaiah, which also reminds me of the several times that Jesus answers and says, have you not read?
Yeah.
Those are sobering to me. You know, I'm sitting in a situation, I think I've got this right, and here's Jesus telling me, you completely missed the mark on this. That's sobering. When I look at these scriptures, am I taking something physical, something God meant to be spiritual, making it physical, and have I completely missed the mark because I'm so embedded in however I want to view?
Yeah, and that's what we accuse of the whole religious world of doing, right? They take the Bible, you not applying it right. You're misapplying it. Oh, you're taking baptism, you're misapplying it. You take this. We need to look at ourselves to be sure we're not doing the same thing. That we're not reading under our traditions we talked about last time. Okay, and applying it to that. All right, they're in Bethsaida when they do this. They come across the same bit over here. They came across up here. That's where the conversation about the bread took place. And now they're fixing to go north, way north. Okay. Let's see if I get now. I have another map. All right. Look up at the very top of the map in the center. You see Dan up there? Remember back to the Old Testament times when you wanted to talk about the entire land of Israel? You go from Dan to Beersheba. Remember those two names coming in? This is Dan way up here. So this is the very northern, very tip part of the original land that the Israelites were given up here. And we're going over to Caesarea Philippi up there. And several things are going to happen up there. So I got some pictures here. It's kind of this getting up near Mount Hermon, this hilly, higher grounds up here. This old synagogue there, and the old Roman archway bridge. But they bring to Jesus this blind man. They want him to touch him. Just why touch him? Well, that's all it takes to make him well. That's what he's after. Just touch him type thing. And Mark says that back in Mark 6, that any of the villages that they enter in, they bring the people and lay them there. They might just touch him with his garment. We've kind of read that kind of stuff before. So all they want is just get close to Jesus and make me well. Just get me close to it there. So Jesus takes this blind man and leads him kind of away, out of the city, away from the crowd, seems like. And he spits on his eyes and touches him. And this is kind of common with healing blind. Remember one time he spit on the ground, made this little mud stuff and put on the guy's eyes. So what that has to do with healing the blind, I don't know, but it's used more than once there. Then he asked him if he could see. And he said, nope, everything's blurry out there. He kind of hit me real hard. I was looking at this thing here. Oh, yeah, I understand what he's saying. I see y'all, but I can't see you out there. With this other eye over here. Can you see? And he said, no. What did he say? I see men walking around like trees out there. I mean, I see something, but I can't tell what it is out there. So that's, before we go to the next line, why? Why did it not work the first time? Every time, other times we've had Jesus healing somebody, what's been the effect? We've used the term over and over, all last quarter, immediate. I mean, this happened? Well, immediately. This time it took like 2 tries. He did it again, and now the man can see. I can't tell you why. I don't know why. I know what some of the commentators think, that the man had some faith that Jesus could do it, but not He wanted to increase his faith, so he did it in a two-step thing to get him to see that Jesus could help him, and then, now I see who you are, I want more. I don't know how that really works into it, but some of the reading there. So, actually, the second time, the man can now see clearly. But then, back when he healed the man over on the shore with all the swine, the man wanted to go with him. He said, "No, don't go with me. Go tell everybody about me." What did he tell this guy? Don't tell him. Why the difference? What's he trying to do now? He's trying to get away from people, right? This is a period of retirement. Get away from the people to spend time with the apostles. So if that's what it is or not, he said, don't go tell people about what's going on. So, okay, now we launch into what has been turned into some very difficult verses. And so we'll talk about some of the whys and wherefores with some of these. Peter's confession. This is Mount Hermon. Mount Hermon is over 9,000 feet high. You can see of Galilee, if I remember right, it's like 600 feet below sea level. So you see the difference in elevation from here to there. Mount Carmel up here, where Elijah's sacrifice was, I think it's like 7,000 feet. End up being high mountain sticking out in the sea over there. So Mount Hermon is the highest anywhere around here. And it's just north, here's Caesarea Philippi here, just north of that. So let's go come into play. So they're at Caesarea Philippi now. And Jesus asked this question. Who do people say I am? What's the opinion people have of me as far as who I am? And he got various answers. He said, say some John the Baptist, some Elijah, some Jeremiah, or one of the other prophets. I mentioned there that one of the prophets has come back to life, type thing. It's interesting that they put Elijah in there, I guess, because of what's going to happen in the next little bit here. More pictures around Caesarea Philippi. We'll get a closer shot of that just in a minute. So Jesus then turned and asked them how they would answer that same question. Okay, that's who men say I am. Who do you say that I am? Well, Peter speaks up and makes this bold confession, something that he would not have said 2.5 years ago. That's what it is now. You're the Christ, the Son of the living God. And I think Mark and Luke use that first part of that phrase, but leave off the last part. But you are the Christ. You're the Christ, the Son of the living God. So that's the simple, bold statement that Peter makes with that. But here's where it starts getting distracted, I guess. Jesus makes a comment then in verse 18. I say that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. The gates of Hades will not prevail against it. So there's several things in that verse. The I will build my church indicates that it's not there yet. Okay, it's coming. It's a future tense type thing, so we can see that. The question that comes up, it gets kicked around this verse a lot, is on this rock. I say to you that you are Peter, and on this rock I'll build my church. Now, we'll back up to where my slide, go back to this. This big rocky cliff up here. This is actually the goddess they use up here is Pan, P-A-N. And in this whole cliff up here, I've seen close-ups. I don't know how I have one in this set of slides. We'll see one in a minute. It's got a little niche made out in it, but there's niches made out where they placed idols all in this thing up here, in this rock. So this big rock is here. So let's keep that rocky cliff there in mind as we go through this part here too. Okay. This rock of my church. What is the rock? What is that Jesus is talking about? On this rock, I'll build my church. Well, lots of different ideas. Christensen, who was an early historian, says on the faith of his confession, he built this church on the faith of Peter's confession. Others will have it to be on Peter. You're the rock. What's Peter's name mean? Jesus changed it from Simon. Remember, Simon was his name back when Jesus met him. He changed his name to Peter. So Peter means rock. Generally, I understand it, a stone as opposed to a rock cliff. But the very name playing here comes into play. And I can't explain all of it to you in depth there. But on this rock, on you, Peter, I'll build my church. We'll build my church. So I'm going to take time to get into a long discussion about this. But it comes down to what is Peter's role going to be in the future of the church. Peter's made the confession, and Jesus is saying, on this rock, something tied to that, I will build my church. So is he going to build it on Peter? You're the rock? Or is he going to build it on the confession that Peter made here? Or what's Jesus using for that foundation for his church? That's the point to get to there. And I'll touch on that in a minute. Let me back up and get a couple more points. Go back to the future. I will build my church. Church here is, the word for it is an assembly. We a lot of times hear this ecclesia, I think how you pronounce it, being a called out group. That's the kind of definition we hear a lot of times for ecclesia. The church is a called out group. Let me give a couple of verses to think about with that. 1 Peter 2:9 says you're called out of darkness into his marvelous light. A called out group from that standpoint. In Titus 2:14, 13 and 14, who gave himself for us, he might redeem us from every lawless deed and purify himself, his own special people, a special called out group, if you will, zealous to good works. And 2 Thessalonians 2:14, 13 and 14, God from the beginning chose you for salvation through sanctification by the Spirit and belief in the truth, which he called you by our gospel to obtain the glory of Jesus, Lord Jesus Christ. In Colossians 3:15, let the peace of God rule in your hearts, to which you are also called in one body, and be thankful. So we see that same word used different times talking about the called out group, this church that Jesus will build. So it's the confession, as far as I'm concerned, it's the confession of faith that Peter made in Jesus. It's the rock on which he's going to build this church. And we can take time to dive off into a whole bunch of different branches of that, who thinks differently. And if you're going to talk about it sometime with me, I'll be glad to talk about it. If you have different thoughts about it, but we got a time crunch here. So here's the closer to this rock thing. Here's the little niches I was talking about where they place the idol gods up here. To Pan, P-A-N. The cave of Pan. That's Caesarea Philippi. But then he goes, that's the next verse. That was 16:18 we're looking at. Now it's 16:19. He was getting a little more complicated sometimes, the way people use it. I'll give you, who's he talking to? Say that you are Peter, upon this rock I'll build my church. So I'll give to you the keys to the kingdom. So how do we interpret that phrase? I give to you, Peter, the keys to the kingdom. So is Peter some special, what's Peter's role going to be here as opposed to the other apostles? Well, who was chosen to speak in Acts 2, that very first sermon? Peter was. Who broke the news? Who opened the door to the Jews to the gospel? Peter did. Jump over to Acts chapter 10. Who unlocked the keys, with the keys to the kingdom, to the Gentiles? Well, Peter did. Okay, so seems like Jesus here is telling Peter, I've got some special roles for you, Peter, to play in unlocking the gospel to these other places out here. Then he goes on and says, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. What you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. That's caused a lot of problems too. Did the apostles have the ability to make laws? What you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. And what you loose, what you require of people, will be required by heaven. And what you turn loose and don't require of people on earth, heaven will agree with you and not cause those things to them. The New American Standard puts it in a different way. Whatever you bind on the earth shall have been bound in heaven. Which I think is a much better thing. What's he saying? Let me read you one little thing, if I can find it right quick. Some see this passage as granting to a religious body, the church, the right to enforce its own judgments with full assurance of divine approval of the judgments. So the church decides what it wants to do, and God's going to stamp it okay. Because what you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. And the writer goes on to say, this is outrageous. God alone determines what's right and wrong. We, the church, doesn't have a right to decide what's right and wrong. So that's why I come back to the New American Standard translation of this. What's the church going to bind on people? What's bound in heaven already, right? And what's going to not be required of people by the church, by Peter and those who are preaching here? Well, what's been loosed in heaven? So I think this is a much better translation here of what they're going to enforce those things, bind or require or loose, not require those things that's already been set in heaven for that way. I'm sure that's not very clear. Somebody got something to add to it. Want to talk about it, Tracy?
Just real quickly, at the
Sure.
end of time, you've got the Holy Spirit. I think it's important to play the Holy Spirit's role at the end of what you're saying, because these things I can't give you now because you don't understand. You don't get it. The Holy Spirit will come and He'll lead you in all these things. That's how that fulfills.
Yeah, we'll get to that next quarter, I guess. Yeah. All this part of John 13, 14 through 16, 17, a lot that Jesus says to his disciples there toward the end. And what Tracy's alluding to here, he tells them then, I got some things to tell you don't understand yet, but I'm going to send the Holy Spirit to you, and He will guide you to those things. You're going to understand more of what I'm telling you after I'm gone, when the Spirit comes to guide you into them. And so that's that, Jeff.
Yeah, I was just going to say quickly that if everybody read the commentary, at least to put some thoughts in their brain to help them not forget some things here. But, like the person that wrote the commentary in the lesson here was saying about the Catholic religion, that's something. So the key says that he's the ownership of everything, infallible, which led to the popes of today and all that right there. But if you look at scriptures like the ones brought out here, Paul calling them out and all that, is far from infallible. And that right there, but keys are used to open doors, and to the point you brought up, who opened more doors for the church and for saving souls and adding them to the chief cornerstone than Peter did in there. But anyway, there's some good points he brought. Whether you believe everything that he was pointing out or which way that he thought it was going, it's a very good point there that he writes up about how there's false teaching tied to this passage where people have given Peter, right up there with Jesus almost.
Oh, yeah.
Most as far as power. And
Yeah. As he's talking to Peter, what you bind, Peter, on earth will be bound in heaven, which then leads to the infallibility of what he's getting at. The Pope. The Pope can bind. The Pope, which is the thing eventually involved into, has the ability to bind laws. The Pope can write laws for the church. Same infallibility that God has got. Not on this day, but when it took a little time to progress into there. Okay, now he moves on, and he's going to tell them this twice. Just in pretty close verses back to back here about him being killed. He's got to get them to understand what's going to happen to him. I mean, I think they still have in the back of their mind this earthly king concept that the people wanted back when he fed the 5,000. I don't think that's totally gone in their mind, and we'll see why just in a minute. He said, Peter's made the confession now that you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. But he says, don't tell anybody about that yet. Don't start talking about that. Why? Well, if you get that out that I'm claiming that and I'm not ready for it yet, things are going to happen outside my timeline. I've got a timeline I'm working here I'm not ready for that yet. So I've got to go to Jerusalem, suffer many things, be killed, and then say I've got to go die. I'm going to be killed. There's a little difference in that, okay? And be raised on the third day. And I'm sure I can see their mind trying to process that at this point. I don't believe it's there yet, okay? And the reason I don't believe it's all there is, what did Peter tell him? Peter pulled Jesus aside and said, "Not so, Lord. It's not going to happen to you. No way." Now, is Peter just thinking, no, you won't go be killed? Or no, you're going to be our earthly king? Or no, I'll go die in your place? I'll take my sword out and fight. I don't know what Peter's got in his mind here. I do know what Jesus told him, though. He says, "You're out of place, Peter. I'm the master. You're the apostle. You're the learner. You're the disciple. Get back in place. What I'm telling you is going to happen. So don't come back and rebuke me and say that's not going to happen. Just get back in your place. Just get behind me, Satan. If what you just said happened, if I didn't die, Satan wins. Okay? So get behind me, Satan. Get back in your place. Listen to what I'm saying. This is how it's got to happen."
It seems like Jesus saw that all the other disciples saw what Peter was doing. And it seems like he felt the need to nip it in the bud.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah, it's important that they've got to start understanding he's going to die. And like I said, I don't think they have that concept yet at all. There. So right after this, then, he comes in with this thing. If you want to come after me, if you desire to follow me, Peter, get back in place now. If you desire to follow me, if you desire to be an elder, that desire's got to be there, desire on our part. If you desire to come after me, deny yourself. And this is a mouthful. When you start thinking what deny self means, all of us, to forget oneself, to lose sight of oneself and one's own interest. Can you do that? Have we done that? Think about what all that involves. To forget oneself, to lose sight of oneself and one's interest. Gone, gone, gone. To take up his cross, the sight, we're not used to seeing this. The sight of with Romans doing their crucifixion, it's not just in Jerusalem where we're used to thinking about crucifixion, but wherever. The sight of a man dragging his cross through the streets going out to where they're going to crucify him. And you look at that man and you think he's going to be hanging on that cross when he gets to where he's going with it. He's going to die. You say, take up your cross. You got to, all these things we just talked about self-wise, you got to die. And follow me. And that's a lot to think about in putting all this stuff behind us. Follow Jesus only. Big challenge. Because whoever desires to save his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. It's kind of a tongue twister if you don't think about what it's saying. You want to save your life, you got to lose it. If you lose your life for my sake, you're going to find it. That's what somebody called the philosophy of dying to live. I've got to die to myself. Why? So I can live with Christ. Okay. Only if one's willing to surrender all of his being to the Lord to hope his eternal soul can be saved from eternal loss of all its qualities that we'll consider to be life. That's a strong sentence there, and I read through it in a hurry. My clock's ticking away up there, and I'm nowhere near finished yet. So, he puts it another way. So, what profit is it for man if he gains the whole world? So all this oneself. If all myself, if I gain and gain, what's it worth if I lose my soul? Or what am I willing to swap for my soul? How much have I got to gain of what I want to change my soul. Psalm 49:5. Why should I fear in the days of evil, when iniquities at my heels surrounds me? Though to trust in their wealth and boast in the multitude of their riches, none of them can by any means redeem his brother. But you can't buy your brother with riches, nor give to God a ransom for him. For the redemption of their souls is costly, and it shall cease forever. Sin separates us from God. There's nothing that we have or can get that will pay that debt for our soul. Nothing except the blood of Jesus. All right, one little slide here on this point. I sure did say there are some in here standing today will not taste death. They see the Son of Man come in his kingdom. The reference, no doubt in my mind, has to do with there are some who are there physically living, who will still be there physically living when the kingdom comes. There's Acts chapter 2. And that verse, again, has been taken out of context and used in lots of different ways. But I don't see where it's complicated at all. There are some who will taste death. Do they see the kingdom come? Not Jesus come back in his glory, okay? Not the second coming, but the coming of the kingdom. All right, what did I do? I don't have time to do this. Got 2 minutes left. All right, we're going to start to do it. Jesus took Peter, James, and John to a high mountain. All right, they're up near Mount Hermon, which is the high mountain if you're in that area up there, over 9,000 feet. This is some shots of Mount Hermon, snow-capped. Beautiful scenery here from that standpoint. Some place, and there's a monument or a shrine thing on Mount Tabor here. It's only 1,900 feet, but it's higher than anything around it. They're close in the Jezreel Valley. Some place Mount Tabor, but like I said, there's a traditional spot on Mount Tabor that the transfiguration took place. There's Mount Tabor sticking up from the valley floor. But personally, I still lean toward Mount Hermon being the place where it actually took place. So they're there, and Jesus' appearance is changed. He's transfigured, changed. He's changed in his form. Remember these things were out several years ago? They may still be out for kids. I don't know. Called Transformers. Take that thing there and make it like a car. It's a guy or it's a car. I mean, think about it, transform. Jesus is going to change from his earthly physical appearance into something else. Okay. We see that verse same word. We're to be transformed out of the power of darkness, the power of Jesus' Son. So Moses and Elijah appear there with Jesus. Very unusual thing. Peter, James, and John are there. Give me about half a second here. And Peter's just building 3 booths, something like this. That's what they might build for him there, which is common type thing. And this is the end. Moses representing the law, Elijah representing the prophets. Well, the whole thing, the point here is he's showing this is the end of the law and the prophets. The whole transfiguration is about from that standpoint. While he's still speaking about God overshadows him, it's my beloved Son whom I am well pleased. Who? Hear him, not Moses and Elijah. They're going away. The law's gone, prophets are gone. Now you're going to hear Christ. Last day spoken to us by his Son. And I'm going to stop here and I got a whole little blip here about how much do we hear of him.